In the bustling city of Lagos, where the sounds of constant honking of danfo buses mixed with the beats of street drummers and the hustlings of area boys, was a woman named Kemi. Kemi was known for her gentle nature, her beautiful smile that seemed to radiate from her very being. Her name, Oluwa Kemi, meaning God takes care of me, was apt, for she was seen as a blessing by all who knew her, except one person, her mother-in-law, Adeola. Kemi had married into a wealthy family. Her husband Adeola was the only child of Adeola and Babaola. Adeola, a tall, handsome man, was the pride of his parents. He was intelligent, hardworking, and most essentially, he loved Kemi with all his heart. From the moment they met, Adeola knew that Kemi was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, regardless of her humble beginning. But Adeola had other plans. She had always dreamed of choosing the perfect wife for her son, a woman from a wealthy family who could bring honor and more wealth to the Ola family name. When Adeola introduced Kemi as the woman he wished to marry, Adeola's heart sank. How could her son, the apple of her eye, marry a girl from such a poor background? A girl whose family could barely afford 3 square meals. To Adeola, this was an affront to her family status. From the very beginning, Adeola made her feelings known. She never missed an opportunity to criticize Kemi, to point out her flaws, and to compare her unfavorably to the daughters of her wealthy friends. Kemi, she will say, in a tone dripping with disdain, you don't even know how to serve a proper meal. My son deserves better. Kemi, with her gentle nature, will only smile and respond softly, I'm sorry, Mama. I will do better next time. But Adeola had no intention of giving Kemi a chance. She began to plot ways to drive a wedge between her son and his beloved wife. She would whisper into Adeola's ears, planting seeds of doubt. Are you sure this girl loves you? She would say, I hear stories, Stories of girls from poor backgrounds who marry rich men only to take advantage of them. Adeola, in his deep love for Kemi, would dismiss his mother's words. Mommy, Kemi loves me. I know she does. Please give her a chance. Yet, the more Adeola defended Kemi, the more determined Adeola became to rid herself of this unwanted daughter-in-law. She tried everything, spreading rumors in the neighborhood, creating misunderstandings within the family, and even visiting the local babalaos to seek advice. But nothing seemed to work. Kemi's love for Adeola and her patience only grew stronger with each trial. One day, after months of unsuccessful schemes, Adeola decided to take a drastic action. She convinced herself that Kemi had bewitched her son, that only something as powerful as a portion from Baba Agba will break the spell. She planned her move carefully, waiting for the right moment to strike. Adeola had gone to cry to Baba Agba to help her save her son. Baba Agba in turn gave Adeola a substance to put in Kemi's food, and upon contact, Kemi will disappear to Baba Agba's shrine and remain there, serving the shrine forever. Baba Agba had warned Adeola that there was no antidote. The spell was irreversible. It was a Friday afternoon and the sun hung high in the sky, casting long shadows over the bustling Lagos streets of Ilupeju. Adeola prepared a special dish of pounded yam and egusi soup, spiced with the substance she had procured from Baba Agba's shrine. She wrapped the dish carefully in a cloth and made her way to Adeola and Kemi's home. Let me surprise them, she thought, a wicked smile playing on her lips. Let me show Kemi what it means to mess with Adeola. Upon arriving at their home, she found the house empty. Adeola was still at work, and Kemi, unknown to Adeola, had gone to spend the night with her parents. Taking advantage of the empty house, Adeola entered the kitchen and set the meal on the table. Satisfied with her work, she quietly left the house, a sense of grim satisfaction setting over her. She could already envision the chaos that would unfold. With Kemi gone, her son would be heartbroken, but it would be a heartbreak he could recover from. Perhaps then he will see reasons and allow his mother to choose a wife who was truly worthy of him. Adeola finally arrived home, exhausted from a long day of work. As he stepped into the house, he was greeted by his silence. He called out for Kemi, but received no answer. The house felt strangely empty. But he noticed the note on the table. He read it and smiled. "Ah, Mommy's cooking," he murmured to himself. "It's been a while." His stomach growled with hunger. Without a second thought, he made his way to the kitchen. The scent of pounded yam and egusi soup wafting through the air, making his mouth water. Meanwhile, Kemi, sitting with her parents, felt a sudden unease. She couldn't place it, but a chill ran down her spine. "Mommy, Mommy," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I think I should go back home. Something doesn't feel right." Her parents, sensing her worry, urged her to stay. "Kemi," her mother said gently, "you are just tired. Rest a while longer." But Kemi's heart was restless. She felt a tug, an inexplicable urge to return to her husband. Back at the house, Adeola was already in the kitchen. He lifted the cover off the steaming pot of soup, inhaling deeply. "Ah, Mommy knows how to cook, sha." He quickly served the meal, grabbing a bowl of pounded yam. As he was about to take his first bite, the front door creaked open. Kemi rushed in, her eyes wide with urgency. "Adeola, stop!" she cried out, startling him. The morsel paused mid-air, inches from his lips. "Kemi, what is it?" he asked, surprised by her sudden appearance and the fear in her voice. Before Kemi could respond, a knock came at the door. They turned to see a young man from the neighborhood, panting as if he had run a great distance. "Kemi," he yelled, "your mother." She collapsed suddenly. "They are saying it's serious. You need to come quickly." Kemi felt her knees weaken, her head spinning with the news, but something inside her told her to stay. She looked at the food Adeola was holding, then back to the young man. "Go ahead," she told him, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll be there soon." Adeola set the plate down, his hunger forgotten. "Kemi, let's go together. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. She nodded, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "All right," she whispered, "let's go." As they left the house, the plate of food was still on the table. But fate had intervened this time, delaying the cruel plan of a mother blinded by her ambition. However, little did they know, Iyala was not done yet. The darkness in her heart had only grown. The evening air was cool as Kemi and Adeola hurried through the narrow streets of Lagos, the news of her mother's sudden collapse weighing heavily on their minds. The bustling city of Lagos seemed to move in slow motion around them. Every step towards Kemi's parents' house felt like a mile. When they arrived, they found a small crowd gathered outside the modest home. Concerned neighbors murmured amongst themselves, their faces painted with worry. Kemi's father, an elderly man with a kind face, stood at the doorway, his eyes red from tears. "Kemi," he called out when he saw his daughter. "Thank the gods you are here." He embraced her tightly, his shoulders shaking with emotion. "Your mother, she just collapsed while we were talking. One moment she was fine, and then she was on the ground." Kemi's heart ached at the sight of her father so distraught. She gently pulled away and made her way inside. Adeola close behind. They found her mother lying on a makeshift bed, her breathing shallow and labored. A local healer was by her side, chanting softly. The healer looked up as Kemi entered, her expression grave. "She's very weak," she said in a low tone, "but the gods are with her. She will need rest and proper care." Kemi nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. She knelt beside her mother, taking her frail hand in hers. "Mommy, I'm here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please be strong for me. You must get better." For hours they stayed by her side, Kemi refusing to leave her mother even for a moment. Adeola watched her with admiration and concern, knowing how deeply she loved her family. He saw the strength in her, the unwavering determination to stand by those she loved, and his heart swelled with pride. This is the woman he had chosen, the woman he loves more than anything in the world. As night fell, the healer finally spoke again. "She will sleep now," she said, her tone softer. "It is a good sign. Let her rest." Kemi and Adeola exchanged a wary glance, relief washing over them. They knew the road to recovery would be long, but for now, there was hope. They decided to stay the night, to be close in case anything happened. As they settled down on the floor of the small living room, Kemi leaned against Adeola, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Thank you for being here," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Adeola kissed her forehead gently. "I will always be here, Kemi, always." Meanwhile, back at their home, Iyaola was pacing back and forth in their own living room, her mind racing. She had expected to hear something by now. Some news of Kemi disappearing to Baba Agba's shrine, of Adeola finally seeing the mistake he had made in marrying her. But there was nothing. She had even called Adeola's phone, but there was no answer. "What is taking so long?" she muttered to herself. Could it be that the substance didn't work? A pang of fear gripped her heart. She had gone too far to back down now. She needed to see this through, no matter what it took. She decided to go back to Adeola and Kemi's house to see for herself what was happening. She grabbed her shawl and stepped out into the cold night, her steps quick and purposeful. The streets were quiet now, most of the city asleep, but her mind was alive with dark thoughts. When she arrived, she found the house quiet. She knocked on the door but received no response. Pushing it open, she stepped inside, her eyes scanning the dimly lit room. Everything seemed in place, nothing out of the ordinary. She moved towards the kitchen, her heart pounding in her chest. There, on the table, was a plate of food she had left earlier, untouched. Her heart sank. "No," she whispered. Rushing over to the plate, she touched the food. It was cold. A wave of panic washed over her. If neither Adeola nor Kemi had eaten the food, then something had gone wrong, very wrong. She quickly cleared the plate, hiding the evidence of her failed plan. Her mind raced with new schemes, new ways to rid herself of Kemi once and for all. But as she stood there, a strange feeling crept over her, a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. Not of getting caught, but of what might happen if she failed again. She knew she had to act fast, to find a way to turn this situation to her advantage. But what? What could she do now? As she stood in the darkened kitchen, plotting her next move, she heard a voice behind her. "Mommy!" She spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. It was Adeola, standing in the doorway, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Iyaola quickly composed herself, forcing a smile. "Ah, Adeola, my son. I was just getting worried. I heard Femi's mother was ill, and I wanted to see if everything was all right." Adeola's expression softened slightly. "Yes, Kemi's mother collapsed, but she is stable now. Kemi is with her. Thank the gods," Iyaola said, her voice trembling. "I was so worried." Adeola nodded, but his eyes were still on his mother, sensing something off. "Why are you in the kitchen, Mommy?" he asked. Iyaola hesitated for a moment. I was just checking if there was anything to clean up," she said finally, hoping her lie would hold. "You know now, I can't stand a messy kitchen." Adeola stared at her for a moment before nodding slowly. "I appreciate your concern, Mommy, but there's no need to worry about that now. Why don't you go home and rest? It's late." Iyaola nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Yes, you're right," she said quickly. "I'll go now. But if you need anything at all, just call me." Adeola watched her leave, a feeling of unease settling in his stomach. Something didn't feel right, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. He decided to brush it off for now. There were more important things to worry about, like Kemi and her mother. As Iyaola made her way back home, her mind was already concocting a new plan, a plan that will ensure her success this time. She knew she had to be more careful, more cunning. She would not let Kemi ruin her son's life. She would not let her son ruin his own future. The next morning, Kemi and Adeola were still at her parents' home when they received a visit from a relative. It was Auntie Funke, a wise and respected elder in the family. She had also been fond of Kemi and had supported their marriage from the start. She pulled Kemi aside, her face serious. "Kemi, I have heard something disturbing," she said in a low voice. "Things about your mother-in-law. You must be careful, my dear. There are whispers that she's planning something terrible." Kemi's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, Auntie?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, and Auntie Funke sighed. "I don't know all the details, but I've heard enough to know that she will not stop until she gets what she wants. You must protect yourself and Adeola. Do not let her come between you." Kemi nodded, her mind spinning with this new information. She had always known her mother-in-law didn't like her, but she hadn't realized the extent she could go. She knew she had to be vigilant, to be strong. As she returned to Adeola, her resolve strengthened. She will not let Iyaola win. She will fight for her marriage, for her love, no matter what it took. But little did she know, Iyaola's next move was already in motion. Kemi, now aware of Iyaola's deep-seated animosity and willingness to go the extra mile, remained on high alert. She confided in Adeola, sharing her fears and suspicions, but he struggled to believe his mother could harbor dark intentions. "Mami has her ways, Kemi. She will say anything, trying to console her, but she would never do anything to hurt us. She just needs time to accept you fully." Kemi nodded, but in her heart she knew the truth. Iyaola's dislike for her was like a stormy cloud hovering over their marriage, threatening to strike at any moment. She continued to watch, to wait, and to pray, hoping that Adeola would soon see his mother's true nature before it was too late. Meanwhile, Iyaola's mind was a whirlwind of plots and plans. Her initial attempt had failed, but she was undeterred. And so she devised a new plan, a plan more cunning and dangerous than the last. This time, she would use a different approach, one that wouldn't require direct confrontation. She decided to leverage Adeola's trust and love for her, using it as a weapon against Kemi. She began plotting subtle seeds of doubt in Adeola's mind once again, this time suggesting that Kemi might be involved in dark, mysterious activities. "Adeola," she began one evening, her voice soft and concerned, "have you noticed anything strange about Kemi lately?" Adeola looked up from his work, a frown forming on his face. "What do you mean, Mami?" "I don't want you to worry, my son," she continued, feigning hesitation. "But I've heard whispers. People are talking in the market, saying she has been seen visiting certain places, meeting with people who deal in charms and dark magic." Adeola frowned deeply. "That's not true, Mami. Kemi would never do such a thing." "I pray you're right," Iyaola said, her eyes downcast. "But I worry for you, my son. You know how these things can be. Sometimes some people change when they are desperate." Adeola tried to shake off her mother's words, but they lingered in him like a persistent echo. Could it be true? Could Kemi be resorting to desperate measures? The idea seemed absurd. The seeds of doubt had been planted, and it slowly began to grow. Over the next few days, Iyaola continued her campaign, each word a carefully placed brick in her wall of deceit. She would comment on how Kemi's behavior seemed different, how she seemed secretive, often disappearing without explanation. She even went so far as to suggest that Kemi might be trying to harm Adeola in order to gain his wealth. At first, Adeola dismissed these notions, but as the days passed, his mind became clouded with uncertainty. He loved Kemi deeply, but his mother's words had taken root. He began watching Kemi more closely, his gaze tinged with suspicion, and it was this very suspicion that Iyaola had hoped for. Seeing her plan taking shape, Iyaola decided it was time for the final act. She reached out to Baba Agba again for his powerful concoction, a portion she claimed would protect her son from any harm that might come his way. In truth, the portion was nothing more than a means to take Kemi out of the way by accusing her of harming her son and would mean kicking her out of Adeola's house. With the portion in hand, Adeola made her way to Adeola and Kemi's home once again. She arrived with a smile, her demeanor warm and loving. "Adeola, my dear," she called out as she entered the house, "I have brought you something special, a tonic to keep you strong and healthy." Adeola, still feeling the weight of his mother's words, accepted the bottle with a grateful smile. "Thank you, Mommy," he said. "I appreciate your concern." "Of course, my son," she replied, her smile unwavering. "Drink it now while it is fresh. It will keep you safe from any harm." Adeola nodded and uncorked the bottle. He poured the liquid into a glass and drank it in one swift motion, trusting his mother's intentions without questions. Adeola watched him closely, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that soon her son would fall ill and Kemi would be blamed. The plan was perfect, except for one thing. She had not anticipated Adeola's unyielding love for his wife. That evening, as the sun set over Lagos, Adeola began to feel a strange sensation in his stomach. At first, he thought it was merely indigestion, but soon the pain intensified and he said, "I drank the tonic Mommy gave me. It hurts." Kemi's heart pounded in her chest. She knew something was terribly wrong. She called for help, her voice breaking with desperation, and soon neighbors arrived, rushing Adeola to the hospital. While on the hospital bed, suddenly a whirlwind swept through the ward, and a few seconds later, the lights were on again. But alas, Adeola had disappeared. He was no longer in the room. Kemi ran around confused. There was chaos in the whole hospital. Kemi's eyes were red from crying, not knowing if she was dreaming or if it was true. She prayed, her hands tightly together, begging the gods to bring her husband back. Adeola arrived at the hospital shortly after, her face pale as she heard the news. She rushed into the room, her eyes widening in shock as she was told what had happened. She screamed, "No! No! This can't happen!" she whispered, her voice trembling. "This wasn't supposed to happen." Kemi turned to her, her eyes blazing with fury. "What have you done?" she screamed, her voice filled with pain and anger. "This is your doing, isn't it?" Adeola fell to her knees, her hands covering her face. Her plan had backfired in the worst possible way. She had lost everything, her son to Baba Ifa, her pride and her sanity. The reality of her actions hit her like a tidal wave, and she began to sob uncontrollably, the weight of her guilt crushing her soul. She remembered Baba Agba's words, "This has no antidote, no antidote, no antidote." Adeola had unknowingly used the portion meant for Kemi. The community soon learned of what had transpired, and the once respected Adeola became a castaway. The whispers of her evil deeds spread like wildfire, and she was shunned by all who knew her. She became a ghost of her former self, wandering the streets of Lagos, haunted by the memory of what she had done to her son. Kemi, though heartbroken, found strength in the love she and Adeola had shared. She returned to her parents' home, finding solace in their arms. She knew she had to move forward, but she would never forget the pain of losing Adeola to Baba Ifa's shrine. The pain caused by a mother's blind ambition and hatred.